Hello again, my name's Jeh Johnson. I'm not a big fan of Alan West, and the reason that is, I stated that in a number of previous videos a few years ago. He was asked by the Cold Case Posse to introduce them to certain key influential members of Congress, and from what was reported, he chose not to do that since he didn't want to get involved, and he had aspirations to run for higher office. So we'll see what he does in 2016. But he does come up with some worthwhile comments, and this is one that was written by Alan West on August the 3rd, 2015. I'll attach the link. He wrote, "I continue to be amazed at those who believe it's unnecessary to clearly define Islamofascism and Islam as a driving impetus behind Islamic jihadist and terrorist activities. Recently, speaking before the African Union, President Obama referred to Islamic terrorists as murderers. That sort of dismissive ignorance relegates Islamic terrorists to the same level as a common street criminal who just shot someone in Chicago. Ever heard Obama address, quote, the killing fields of his own hometown? Using just the term murderers seems to equate this current configuration to a law enforcement action. Hardly the case. We cannot depend upon President Obama to defend this nation and protect its citizens if its policies is based on denial. And by the way, drones are not a strategy, and deploying U.S. Navy SEALs to kill Osama bin Laden has not changed a single thing. However, there is a growing concern. Is Obama more concerned about the Muslim community than the security and safety of the United States? I think so. And there can be no doubt Obama's stance caused many to ponder just where do his allegiance and sympathies lie. I don't ponder, I know where they lie, and I've stated where they lie thousands of times. Of course, the liberal progressive left will circle the wagons around their favorite son of socialism. But a recent statement from Homeland Security head Jeh Johnson only continues to fuel the flames about Obama and his allegiance. As reported by Investors.com, after a Muslim terrorist gunned down unarmed Marines in Tennessee, the head of Homeland Security revealed a policy to downplay Islamic role in such terror. The feds are now blindfolding each other on the threat Homeland Security Chief Jeh Johnson refuses to call Islamic terror Islamic, arguing it's critical to refrain from the label in order to build trust among Muslims. In jaw-dropping remarks Friday at Aspen Institute Annual Security Forum, Johnson said the government will call such attacks violent extremism over Islamic terrorism out of respect for the Muslim community. The policy explains why the U.S. prosecutor and lead FBI investigator in the Chattanooga case still insists on calling Mohammed al-Baghdadi's, quote, homegrown violent extremism, though he blogged about his religious motivations for the attack, and he and his family attended a local mosque controlled by a terror-tied Islamic trust. I find it unconscionable that the person entrusted with security of the American homeland is more concerned about, quote, building trust, end of quote, and, quote, respect, end of quote, of and for Muslims community. I tend to believe it's the Muslim community that needs to earn the trust of the American people and display its respect and honor of our way of life and the rule of law in this constitutional republic. Dream on. How is it that Jeh Johnson can say something so asinine without any national outrage? Well, because nobody knows. The media is in the bag. Actually, Johnson should resign immediately because the statements disqualify him from being objective in protecting the American people, and Obama's statements don't disqualify him from being in the Oval Office. I dare say President Obama won't relieve him of his duties because it seems to be the sentiment of Obama and his administration. Bingo. During his recent Pentagon speech, President Obama said, "We are in an ideological war," although he did say only better ideas and not bullets can defeat an ideology. That, ladies and gentlemen, will go down, along with many others, as one of Obama's dumbest statements. So let's analyze this. If Obama says we are in an ideological war, what is the ideology? Jeh Johnson seems to believe it's just a war against violent extremism. If we cannot determine and define the ideology against which we combat, then, since you cannot use bullets according to Obama, how can you assess what better ideas will be successful?
When your hair is on, you're on.
If I had time to sit Jeh Johnson down, this is what I would explain. Sir, Islam stopped being a religion in 622 AD when Muhammad ventured from Mecca to Medina and was called Al-Hira. He linked up with violent gangs who he realized he could manipulate via his newfound belief system, which had been rejected by people of Mecca, namely his own tribe. Banu Qurayza. I would detail the almost 33 combat operations led by Muhammad, starting with the Nakala raid. The history corresponds with a change in the verses of the Quran and a shift to far more violent verbiage. Muhammad came to understand that through fear and intimidation, he could greatly expand his belief. I would explain to Secretary Johnson the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and Muhammad's eventual conquest of Mecca and the Battle of the Trenches resulting in the mass beheading of the men of Banu Qurayza tribe because he was offended. I would ask Johnson, why are you afraid of history and the actions, words, and deeds of Muhammad being followed today? I would ask Johnson if he felt more compelled to subjectively play favorites for the Muslim community in lieu of honoring his oath of office. I would also tell him what Kate Stanley was, since he doesn't seem to know. This clearly demonstrates the abject foolishness that permeates the Obama administration and why none of them can be trusted to defend our republic from Islamic jihadism. As Investors.com reports, Johnson says that dismissing the religious dimensions of the widening homegrown Islamic terror threat is part of the strategy to gain the cooperation of the Muslim community. He says that if officials called Islamic terrorism Islamic, they'd get nowhere. Even the moderator was dumbfounded. Isn't government denying the fundamental religious component of this kind of extremism by not using the word Islamic? I could not disagree more. Johnson retorted, arguing that Islam is about peace. This guy is completely nuts. Well, actually, he's not. He's a follower. Jeh Johnson displayed the qualities of delusion, incompetence, and ignorance. Any of those alone are dangerous. Together and absorbed by Johnson, they represent a clear and present threat to the homeland security. So does Barack Hussein Obama. Secretary Johnson seems to reside in a Marxist-like fantasy world where denial of the enemy, regardless of its own state or motivations, is somehow honorable. It just shows how the current crop in this administration is incapable of rising to the occasion of defending America. It shows that not only have we appeased and surrendered to an Islamic terrorist regime run by clerics in Iran, we are doing likewise here in America. When tolerance becomes a one-way street, it leads to cultural suicide. Here are a few examples as shared by Investors.com. Quote, the notion that Muslim leaders are helping us is totally bogus. In an Islamic State hotspot, Minneapolis, the local Muslim leaders are cooperating by demanding that the FBI release jailed IS terrorist suspects. In Boston, congregations of the mosques attended by the Boston Marathon bombers are cooperating by holding fundraisers and rallies for convicted Al-Qaeda and IS-tied terrorists. We reported recently about H.R. 2899 that will give the Department of Homeland Security a new agency countering violent extremism. There is no way this should be created. There is no way this power should be given to someone like Jeh Johnson, whom I call to resign. Good luck with that one. We already have an Islamist sympathizer in the White House. We have more than that. We have an Islamist extremist, Sunni, homosexual, Arab Muslim. We had another in the Department of Justice who was gone, but he was replaced by Loretta Lynch, who I also believe, based on what I've found, might either be a sympathizer or, in fact, a follower, and whose Fast and Furious program enabled Islamic jihadists to purchase weapons intended to kill Americans in Garland, Texas. Secretary Johnson, you are an Islamist sympathizer. You are a sheep who would sell out our country to the wolves, whether alone or hunting in a pack. Do us all a favor and just go away. Well, he's not going to go away. Barack Hussein Obama is not going to go away. Attorney General Loretta Lynch is not going to go away. Hatchet Face Valerie Jarrett is not going to go away. Susan Rice is not going to go away. None of them are going to go away. Not until we're all gone. You think not? Well, you're not thinking. Like I said, I'm going to attach everything that I just read. You can view it at your leisure. I think Jeh Johnson is no different than the rest of them. He is either an Islamic sympathizer, or I'm more inclined to believe he's a follower of Islam. You know that peaceful, loving religion, the one that Hillary Rodham Clinton spoke about when she lied to the American people in the Rose Garden about Benghazi? That same religious cult, because that's what it is. There's a reason they can't say Islamic extremism. Get it? Good.